My name is Ellen Richardson. I'm 71 years old, and I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. For 6 months, my family built what they called a case that my gambling was spiraling out of control. On Tuesday, September 3rd, they staged what they called an intervention, demanding I stop wasting money on my weekly lottery tickets and casino visits. What they didn't know was that I'd already bought my regular lottery ticket that Saturday. The same numbers I'd been playing faithfully for 15 years. The numbers that meant everything to me. My late husband Harold's birthday and our wedding anniversary. When those exact numbers hit for $5.2 million that Wednesday evening, their true motives became crystal clear faster than you could say jackpot. This is the story of how my family's greed and need for control cost them everything. How their attempt to manage my so-called wasteful spending happened the exact week my consistent system finally paid off with millions. And how the people who wanted to control my financial choices while living off my generosity ended up losing access to both the biggest windfall in family history and the ongoing support they'd been taking for granted. You see, they thought they were staging an intervention for a helpless old woman with a gambling problem. What they were actually doing was revealing themselves as financial predators who'd been circling their prey, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. They picked the wrong week, and they definitely picked the wrong woman. By the time this story ends, you'll understand exactly why the house always wins. Especially when the house belongs to a 71-year-old grandmother who knows her own worth. Before we continue, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories like mine. Let me tell you how this all started. Because understanding my situation will help you see just how calculated my family's behavior really was. I became a widow 4 years ago when my husband Harold passed away from a heart attack. We'd been married for 46 beautiful years, and Harold always said our wedding day, September 6, 1978, was the luckiest day of his life. That's why, starting about 15 years ago, I began playing the same lottery numbers every single Saturday, Harold's birthday, our anniversary date and the year we met. It was my way of keeping him close and honoring our life together. After Harold died, I was left with a decent pension from his years working at the grain elevator. About $62,400 a year, which after taxes gives me roughly $4,160 each month here in Cedar Rapids. I've always been careful with money because I had to be, raising 3 children on Harold's modest salary. My weekly routine became very simple and predictable. Every Saturday, I'd buy my lottery ticket for $20 and spend about $50 on social time at Prairie Meadows Casino with my friend group. That's $70 a week, which works out to about $3,640 yearly, roughly 7% of my income. Well within what any financial advisor would call reasonable entertainment spending. But here's what my family conveniently chose to ignore when they started building their case against me. For the past 2 years, I'd been quietly helping my son Michael with his mortgage payments. Every month, without fail, I'd send him $700 to help cover his house payment. That adds up to $8,400 every single year, more than double what I spent on my lottery tickets and casino visits combined. I never made a big deal about this support, because that's what mothers do. When your children are struggling, you help them however you can. Michael works as an accountant here in town, and every January, he'd come over to help me organize my tax paperwork. He's always been good with numbers, inherited that from his father, but this past January, something changed. Instead of his usual quick review, he lingered over my expense records, pointing specifically at the $3,600 I'd spent on what I labeled as entertainment costs. "Mom," he said, tapping the paper with his pen, "this seems like quite a bit for someone living on a fixed income. Are you sure you're being as careful as you should be?" I explained that this covered my weekly lottery tickets and my social outings with friends at the casino, but I could see something shifting in his expression. The wheels were definitely turning in his head, and not in a good way. Over the following months, Michael started what he called security checks on my bank account. Years ago, I'd given him emergency access to help me if something happened. Seemed like the responsible thing to do as a widow living alone. But now he began questioning every single casino ATM withdrawal, every lottery ticket purchase, every small expense that he deemed unnecessary. His wife Jennifer made it even worse. At family dinners, she started making pointed comments about gambling problems and how they run in families. Always said with this concerned tone that didn't fool me for a minute. She'd mention stories she'd heard about elderly people losing their life savings, always while looking directly at me. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me, even then. Every single month, Michael would deposit that $700 mortgage assistance without question or complaint. When his car broke down in June and he needed an extra $2,000 for repairs, I wrote him a check that same day. But somehow my $70 weekly entertainment budget was suddenly irresponsible and concerning. What really bothered me was the complete lack of acknowledgement for everything I was actually doing right. I paid all my bills on time, maintained my house, helped my family financially, and still managed to save a little each month. But none of that seemed to matter once they decided I had a problem that needed their intervention. Looking back now, I can see they weren't building a case about gambling addiction at all. They were building a case for financial control. And my modest weekly entertainment spending just happened to be the excuse they needed. What started as Michael's occasional security checks in the spring quickly escalated into something much more invasive and concerning by summer. I began to feel like I was being watched and monitored in my own life by my own family. In July, I made what I thought was an innocent mistake. My casino friend group, Martha, Dolores, and Betty, all widows like myself, had won a small jackpot at our weekly bingo night. Nothing major, maybe $30 between the four of us, but we were so excited that we asked another player to take our picture. We were all smiling and laughing, holding up our little winnings. Just four friends having a good time. I thought it was such a sweet moment that I posted it on my Facebook page with the caption "Lucky Night with my girls." That photo set off alarm bells. I never could have anticipated. Jennifer saw that post within hours and immediately called Michael. I know this because I was at their house for dinner the next evening, and I could hear her voice getting louder and more agitated as she talked to him in the kitchen. "Your mother is posting gambling photos on Facebook. What will people think when they see this? She's advertising her problem to the whole world." When they came back to the dining room, both of their faces were tense. Michael cleared his throat and said, "Mom, Jennifer and I think you might want to be more careful about what you share online. Some things are better kept private." I was confused and a little hurt. "What do you mean?" "It was just a fun evening with friends." "Well," Jennifer said, choosing her words carefully, "when people see photos like that, they might get the wrong impression about your activities. We're just thinking about your reputation." That's when I realized they weren't concerned about my reputation at all. They were concerned about theirs. They were embarrassed by me. After that incident, the family meetings started. I wasn't invited to these discussions, but my neighbor Thelma mentioned seeing both Michael and Jennifer's cars at my daughter Sarah's house on multiple weeknights. When I casually asked Sarah about it the next time she called, she got defensive immediately. "We're just concerned about you, Mom. You're getting older and we want to make sure you're safe and making good decisions. There's nothing wrong with family looking out for each other." But something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced that response. The pressure campaign began in earnest during August. Sarah started sending me articles through email with titles like "Warning Signs of Gambling Addiction in Seniors" and "How to Help an Elderly Parent with Compulsive Behaviors." Each email came with a little note. "Thought you might find this interesting, Mom. Love you." Jennifer became even more direct with her passive-aggressive comments. At a family barbecue in late August, she made a point of mentioning a news story she'd supposedly heard about an elderly woman who'd gambled away her life savings. "It's so sad when people that age don't realize what they're doing," she said, looking directly at me. "Family members really need to step in before it's too late." Michael started every phone conversation with what he called wellness checks. "How are you doing, Mom? How are you feeling about your situation?" He'd say "your situation" like I was battling cancer or addiction, this ominous thing that we all had to tiptoe around. The breaking point came during Labor Day weekend. Jennifer had found some old photographs in a box I'd given Sarah, pictures from Harold's and my 40th wedding anniversary celebration. We'd taken a weekend trip to Las Vegas, and there were photos of us at various casinos, smiling and enjoying ourselves. Harold had always wanted to visit Vegas, and I'd surprised him with the trip, Some of our happiest memories were from that weekend. But when Jennifer saw those photos, she confronted me at the family barbecue in front of everyone. Ellen, I had no idea this gambling thing went back so far. You and Harold were at casinos together? This has been going on for years, hasn't it? You need help, real, professional help. I was mortified. She was treating me like I had some shameful secret, when all I'd done was enjoy a weekend vacation with my husband and continue playing lottery numbers that honored his memory. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen, I finally understood what was really happening. This wasn't about my well-being at all. This was about control. They decided I was incompetent to manage my own life and finances, and they were building a case to justify taking over. The hypocrisy was staggering. Every month, Michael cashed my mortgage assistance without any qualms about where that money came from. When he needed extra help for his car repair, he didn't seem concerned about my gambling problem affecting my ability to write him a check. But when it came to my own small pleasures, my weekly lottery tickets and social time with friends, suddenly I needed supervision and intervention. I realized they weren't planning to help me. They were planning to manage me, and the thought of my own children treating me like an incompetent child filled me with an anger I hadn't felt in years. The surveillance intensified as September approached. Michael started calling me twice a week instead of his usual Sunday check-ins, always with questions about my spending. Mom, I noticed you withdrew $40 from the ATM at Prairie Meadows last Tuesday. Was that really necessary? He'd ask these questions like a parent questioning a teenager's allowance spending. Jennifer took it upon herself to drive by my house at random times, claiming she was just checking in but really monitoring when I was home versus when I might be out doing things I shouldn't. She even started timing my grocery shopping trips, asking invasive questions like, "What took you so long at the store, Ellen? Were you making any other stops?" The worst part was how they began treating my casino friends. When Martha called the house one evening while Michael was visiting, he actually took it upon himself to answer my phone. I heard him say, "Oh hi, this is Ellen's son. She's trying to cut back on some of her activities right now. Maybe you could call back another time?" The audacity of that man, screening my phone calls like I was a child. I confronted him immediately. "Michael, those are my friends, and this is my phone. You have no right to intercept my calls." His response was telling Mom, "We're just trying to protect you from influences that might not have your best interests at heart." Influences. He was talking about 3 elderly widows who played bingo and shared coffee cake like we were some kind of criminal enterprise. By the end of August, I overheard a phone conversation that chilled me to the bone. Michael was in my kitchen, talking to someone, I assume it was Jennifer, and he said, "No, we can't just take over her accounts yet. We need documentation that she's not competent to manage her own finances. The gambling pattern gives us a good start, but we need more evidence of poor decision-making." Evidence. They were building a legal case against me, their own mother, based on my $70 weekly entertainment budget, while happily cashing my $700 monthly assistance checks. The Labor Day barbecue incident was just the public launch of their campaign. After Jennifer's confrontation about the Vegas photos, I noticed how they all started watching me differently. Every comment I made was analyzed. Every small decision was questioned. When I mentioned I was thinking about getting my hair done at a new salon, Sarah immediately jumped in with, "Are you sure that's necessary, Mom? Your regular place is so much more affordable." They were treating every aspect of my life like it needed their approval. The final straw came when I discovered they'd been talking to my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson from next door mentioned in passing that Michael had asked her to keep an eye on me and call him if she noticed anything unusual about my comings and goings. They had enlisted my neighbors as spies. I realized then that this wasn't just about gambling anymore. This was about complete control over my life, my choices, and my autonomy. They wanted to turn me into a child who needed permission for everything, and they were using my modest entertainment spending as justification for total financial guardianship. What they didn't know was that their timing couldn't have been worse. While they were busy building their case for financial guardianship, I was about to prove that my irresponsible gambling instincts were better than any investment advice they could have given me. And their elaborate scheme to control my money was going to cost them more than they could ever imagine. Saturday, September 1st, started like any other weekend in my routine. I drove to Casey's General Store on First Avenue, the same place I'd been buying my lottery tickets for years. Mrs. Chen, the clerk, smiled when she saw me coming with my usual slip of paper. "Same numbers as always, Ellen?" she asked, punching in Harold's birthday and our anniversary date like she had hundreds of times before. "Harold always said consistency pays off," I laughed, handing her my $20. "Maybe today's the day he's proven right." I had no idea how prophetic those words would turn out to be. Saturday and Sunday passed quietly. I spent time in my garden, called my friend Martha to plan our Tuesday bingo night, and watched my usual programs. But I noticed Michael driving past my house twice on Sunday afternoon, slowing down like he was checking to see if I was home. The surveillance was getting more obvious and more uncomfortable. Monday evening, Michael called with what sounded like a very carefully rehearsed request. "Mom, we need to have a family meeting tomorrow afternoon. Can you come to Sarah's house at 2 p.m.? It's important, and everyone will be there." My first thought was that someone might be sick, or maybe they had good news to share. "Is everything all right? Is someone hurt?" No, nothing like that. We just need to discuss some family matters. It's important that you're there." Something in his tone made me uneasy. But I agreed. I even decided to bake cookies. My grandmother's oatmeal chocolate chip recipe, thinking it would be nice to contribute something to what I assumed would be a regular family gathering. Tuesday morning, I spent extra time getting ready. I put on my best blue blouse, the one Harold always said brought out my eyes, and carefully packed the cookies in my good container. As I drove to Sarah's house on the west side of town, I was actually looking forward to seeing everyone together. But the moment I walked through Sarah's front door, I knew something was terribly wrong. The living room had been rearranged. Instead of the usual comfortable seating arrangement, chairs were positioned in a semicircle facing one empty chair, clearly meant for me. Michael, Jennifer, Sarah, and her husband Tom were all sitting there looking like some kind of tribunal. The atmosphere was formal and cold, nothing like a family gathering should feel. On the coffee table in front of the empty chair was a manila folder, and I could see the edges of my bank statements sticking out. My heart immediately started pounding. "Mom, please sit down," Sarah said, her voice gentle but serious. "We need to talk." I set my container of cookies on the side table. Nobody even acknowledged them. Slowly sat in the chair they designated for me. I felt like I was facing a jury. Michael cleared his throat and began what was obviously a prepared speech. "Mom, we've asked you here today because we love you, and because we're worried about you. We've been noticing some concerning patterns in your behavior, particularly around your gambling activities. We know this might be difficult to hear," Jennifer added, "but we think you might have a problem that's affecting your judgment and your financial security." I looked around the room at my own children and their spouses, people I'd raised and supported and loved unconditionally, and realized they were staging an intervention like I was some kind of addict. "What exactly are you concerned about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Michael opened the folder and pulled out my bank statements. Statements he'd accessed without my permission for this meeting. "Mom, over the past year you've spent over $3,600 on gambling-related activities. For someone on a fixed income, that's a significant amount of money." "It's my money," I said simply. "And it's money I can afford to spend." "But that's just it." Sarah jumped in. "We don't think you're seeing the big picture clearly. You're 71 years old, and you need to be more conservative with your resources." Then Jennifer pulled out a typed document. They'd actually prepared a written plan. "We've done some research, and we think there are some steps we need to take to help you get back on track." She began reading from their list, and with each item I felt my blood pressure rising. "First, we think you should add Michael to all your bank accounts for transparency and oversight. Second, we believe you should consider moving in with one of us so you have daily support and supervision. Third, any purchases over $100 should be discussed with the family first. Fourth, all gambling activities should stop immediately. And fifth, we think you should sign a financial power of attorney so Michael can help manage your more complex decisions." I stared at them in complete shock. You want me to give up my independence entirely. We want to help you, Michael said. Mom, at your age, these kinds of financial decisions shouldn't be made alone. You need guidance and support. At my age? I repeated. I'm 71, not 91. I've been managing money successfully longer than you've been alive. But that's just it. Tom spoke up for the first time. Your judgment isn't what it used to be. The gambling proves that. That's when the full scope of their plan became clear to me. This wasn't about my gambling at all. This was about taking control of my entire life and all my finances. They wanted to turn me into a dependent who needed permission for everything. What about the mortgage help I give Michael every month? I asked pointedly. If my judgment is so poor, maybe I should stop making those payments too. The room went uncomfortably silent. Finally, Michael said, "That's different, Mom. That's helping family. That's responsible. So giving you money is responsible. But spending my own money on my own entertainment is irresponsible." Jennifer leaned forward with what she probably thought was a caring expression. Ellen, we know this is hard to accept, but gambling addiction often includes denial. The fact that you're defending these behaviors just proves our point. I felt something snap inside me. They'd actually turned my reasonable questions into evidence of addiction. No matter what I said, they'd use it against me. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said, standing up from my chair. You want me to give Michael access to all my accounts, move out of my own home, ask permission for any significant purchases, stop seeing my friends at the casino, and sign away my right to make my own financial decisions. We want to help you stay safe and secure, Sarah said softly. And if I refuse? The pause that followed was deafening. Finally, Michael delivered the ultimatum that revealed their true intentions. Mom, if you won't accept help and make these changes, we'll have to consider limiting our contact with you. We can't enable this behavior anymore, and we can't watch you destroy your financial security. The word enable hit me like a physical blow. They were threatening to cut me off from my own family if I didn't surrender my autonomy to them. But I was enabling them with hundreds of dollars every month, and that was perfectly acceptable. Looking around that living room, seeing the prepared documents and bank statements and their rehearsed presentations, I realized I was surrounded by people who had spent weeks planning how to take control of my life. They'd built their case, gathered their evidence, and coordinated their approach like I was some kind of hostile takeover target. I need some time to think about this, I said quietly, gathering my purse. Of course, Michael said, probably thinking he'd won. Take all the time you need. But Mom, this situation can't continue indefinitely. I walked to my car in a daze, leaving my grandmother's cookies behind. As I drove home, one thought kept echoing in my mind. They'd planned this intervention for weeks, maybe months. They'd been building a case to declare me incompetent while happily cashing my support checks. What they didn't know was that in less than 24 hours, their entire strategy was going to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. While they were planning to control my wasteful gambling, that same gambling was about to make me wealthier than all of them combined. The intervention to stop my lottery playing had happened exactly one day after I'd bought what would turn out to be the most valuable lottery ticket in my family's history. Tuesday night after the intervention, I sat in my kitchen feeling more alone than I had since Harold died. My own children had essentially told me I was incompetent to manage my own life, and they'd threatened to abandon me if I didn't surrender my independence. I kept thinking about that folder of bank statements, how they'd been monitoring and documenting my every move like I was a suspect in my own life. I couldn't sleep that night, so I kept myself busy reorganizing my recipe box and watching late-night television. Every time I thought about their ultimatum, give up your autonomy or lose your family, I felt a mixture of hurt and anger that I'd never experienced before. Wednesday evening, September 5th. Harold's birthday. I was trying to distract myself by watching my usual programs when the Iowa lottery drawing came on. I always checked my numbers more out of habit than hope, but when the announcers started calling out the winning numbers, something felt different. Tonight's winning Powerball numbers are... And then she called Harold's birthday. His exact birth date. My heart started racing, but I told myself not to get excited. One number meant nothing. But then she called our wedding anniversary date. Then the year we met. One by one, every single number I'd been playing faithfully for 15 years. I had to check my ticket 3 times. I walked to the kitchen, turned on every light, put on my reading glasses, and compared each number carefully. There was no mistake. Every number matched perfectly. I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at that little piece of paper. Harold's birthday had just made me $5.2 million. Thursday morning, I called the Iowa lottery office with shaking hands. The woman who answered was wonderfully kind and patient as I read her my numbers and the drawing date. "Congratulations, Mrs. Richardson," she said warmly. "You've won the Powerball jackpot. After federal and state taxes, your prize will be approximately $3.1 million. We'll need you to come to our Des Moines office for verification and to discuss payment options." $3.1 million. I sat in Harold's old chair and thought about how he always used to say, "Consistency pays off, sweetheart. Stick with what works." He'd been right about more than he could have imagined. Thursday afternoon, I drove to Des Moines for the verification process. The lottery officials were professional and thorough, explaining every step of the claiming process. They offered to arrange publicity photos and media interviews for Friday if I was interested. After the week I'd had, the idea of some positive attention actually sounded appealing, so I agreed. Friday morning's photo session at the lottery office was surreal. There I was, holding a giant check for $5.2 million, smiling for cameras while my family had no idea their intervention had happened at the worst possible moment in history. The lottery officials submitted the story and photos to the Cedar Rapids Gazette for their Sunday edition. Friday night I called my friend Martha to share the incredible news. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Ellen, this is amazing. Harold must be looking down laughing at the timing of this." The timing. That's when it really hit me. My family had staged an intervention to stop my wasteful gambling, exactly one day after I'd bought the most valuable lottery ticket in their lives. Their attempt to control my financial choices was about to cost them millions. Sunday morning at 7 a.m., my phone started ringing. Michael's neighbor had seen the Sunday paper and called him immediately. The headline read, "Cedar Rapids widow wins $5.20 million Powerball prize with my photo holding that giant check." Michael called first, and I could hear the shock and excitement in his voice. Mom, I just saw the paper. This is incredible. Congratulations. We need to talk about this." Then Jennifer called, her voice suddenly warm and effusive. "Ellen! Oh my goodness! What wonderful news! We're so happy for you." Sarah called, crying with what she claimed was joy. "Mom, this is such a blessing. This changes everything." Tom called to offer his financial planning services to help me manage this responsibly. Not one of them mentioned Tuesday's intervention. Not one apology for treating me like an incompetent child. Just immediate excitement about my winnings and sudden eagerness to help. They all came over Sunday afternoon with flowers, champagne, and completely different attitudes. Jennifer, who had been lecturing me about gambling addiction for months, was suddenly calling me wise and lucky. Michael, who had questioned every casino visit, was now saying things like, "Mom, you clearly knew what you were doing all along." The transformation was breathtaking and disgusting. "We're so sorry if we seemed worried about your gambling," Sarah said, not quite making eye contact. "We just didn't understand your system. Obviously you had a plan we didn't see." A plan? I'd been buying the same numbers for 15 years because they reminded me of Harold, but they were rewriting history to make themselves look supportive instead of controlling. By the second week, their true intentions started showing through the fake celebration. "Mom, $3.1 million is a substantial amount to manage on your own," Michael said during a visit. "You should probably let me help you with investment decisions and financial planning. Ellen, you'll need protection from scammers and people who might try to take advantage of you," Jennifer added. "Maybe we should set up some kind of oversight system to keep you safe." Oversight system. They were using the exact same language from the intervention, just with a different justification. Before, I needed supervision because I was irresponsible. Now I needed supervision because I was wealthy. The offers to help came daily. Phone calls about investment strategies, suggestions for financial advisors who happened to be friends of Michael's, and concerns about protecting my windfall from people who might exploit me. Week 3 was when their sense of entitlement really emerged. After all our years of supporting you emotionally, this feels like a blessing for the whole family, Jennifer said during what was supposed to be a casual coffee visit. Supporting me? I'd been the one sending Michael money every month, but now they were acting like they'd been my caretakers, deserving of rewards for their sacrifice. Mom, we've always been there for you, Sarah added. When Dad died, when you needed help with decisions, when you were going through difficult times, this windfall isn't just your good fortune, it's a family blessing that we should share together. I sat there listening to them rewrite our entire relationship history. In their new version, I was the dependent one who'd needed their care and guidance. The monthly mortgage payments, the car repair money, the holiday help, all of that was apparently forgotten in favor of this fantasy where they'd been supporting me. The most revealing moment came when Michael said, "Mom, you need to think about what's fair here. We've invested years in taking care of you and looking out for your interests. We deserve to benefit from this stroke of luck too." There it was. They thought they deserved my winnings because they'd invested in me. Never mind that their investment had consisted mainly of trying to control my life while accepting my financial support. By the 4th week, they weren't even pretending anymore. $3 million is more than one person needs, Jennifer stated bluntly. You should think about setting up trusts for the grandchildren, helping Michael pay off his mortgage completely, maybe buying Sarah and Tom a bigger house. When I didn't immediately agree to fund their wish lists, the pressure tactics started. Long phone calls about family obligations, guilt trips about sharing blessings, subtle threats about what might happen to family relationships if I was selfish with my good fortune. The final straw came when Michael said, "Mom, if you don't start thinking about family instead of just yourself, you might find yourself very lonely. Money can't buy the love and support of your children." That's when I realized their intervention hadn't been about helping me at all. It had been about establishing legal grounds to control my finances. When the gambling angle didn't work because I'd actually won millions, they just switched to different manipulation tactics. They'd never loved or respected me. They'd been managing me, positioning themselves to benefit from my resources whether I was broke or wealthy. The intervention, the threats, the sudden celebration, the entitlement, it was all part of the same pattern of treating me like property instead of a person. Sitting in my kitchen that Thursday night, looking at my lottery ticket and thinking about Harold, I made a decision that would change everything. If my own family saw me only as a source of money to be controlled and exploited, then it was time to show them what it felt like to lose access to that source entirely. Friday morning, September 28th, I woke up with absolute clarity about what needed to happen. I'd spent weeks watching my family reveal their true nature, and it was time to respond accordingly. My first call was to the estate attorney Harold and I had used to set up our wills years ago. "Margaret, this is Ellen Richardson. I need to schedule an emergency consultation about my estate planning. Some family circumstances have changed dramatically, and I need legal protection immediately." Margaret Hendricks had been practicing law in Cedar Rapids for over 30 years. When I explained the situation, the intervention, the sudden lottery win, the escalating demands for money, she was quiet for a long moment. "Ellen, what you're describing sounds like a textbook case of financial elder abuse. The intervention attempt followed by immediate entitlement claims is a classic pattern. We absolutely need to protect you, and we need to do it quickly." That afternoon, I sat in Margaret's office and laid out the complete timeline. The months of surveillance, the bank statement gathering, the intervention demands, and then the family's complete transformation when they learned about my winnings. "The most telling detail," Margaret said, "is that they never apologized for the intervention. They just pretended it didn't happen, and immediately started making financial demands. That shows this was never about concern for your well-being." She explained that we needed to take several immediate steps to protect me from further manipulation and potential legal challenges to my mental competency. "First, we're going to document everything that's happened with dates and details. Second, We'll arrange for an independent mental competency evaluation to establish that you're fully capable of making financial decisions. Third, we'll create ironclad legal documents that protect your assets from family interference. While Margaret started the legal paperwork, I had one immediate action to take. That same Friday, I contacted my bank to stop the automatic transfer that sent Michael his monthly mortgage assistance. Mrs. Richardson, I can stop future transfers immediately, the bank representative explained, but it takes one full business week to process the cancellation. The October 1st payment will still go through, but the November payment will be stopped. Perfect. That would give me time to prepare for the conversation I knew was coming. The following Friday, October 5th, when Michael's November mortgage payment didn't transfer automatically, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Mom, there's been some kind of banking error. Your monthly transfer didn't go through. Can you call the bank and get this fixed? I took a deep breath. There's no error, Michael. I've stopped the mortgage payments permanently. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Finally, he said, "What do you mean you've stopped them? I depend on that money." "I know you do, but I also know that you and your family spent weeks building a case that I'm financially irresponsible and need supervision. I've decided to take your advice and be more careful with my money." "Mom, this is completely different. The mortgage help is important. It's not the same as gambling." "You're right," I said calmly. "The gambling made me $3.1 million. The mortgage payments just made you dependent on me while you criticized my financial decisions." Over the next few days, all three of my children called separately, each trying different approaches to restore the money flow. Sarah tried emotional manipulation. "Mom, we're family. Families help each other." Jennifer tried negotiation. "Ellen, maybe we can work out some kind of arrangement that makes everyone comfortable." Tom tried intimidation. "This seems like you're making decisions out of spite rather than wisdom." But it was Michael's final call that really showed their true priorities. "Mom, if you don't restore the mortgage help and start sharing the lottery money fairly, we're going to have to consider legal action. We can't let you make these kinds of destructive financial decisions." Legal action. They were actually threatening to sue me for not giving them money that I'd never been legally obligated to provide in the first place. That's when I realized Margaret had been absolutely right about the financial abuse pattern. They'd tried to take control when they thought I was vulnerable, and now they were threatening legal action when I exercised my right to financial independence. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with an update on our legal strategy. "Ellen, I've consulted with specialists in elder law, and they all agree this situation has significant legal implications. Your family's behavior could actually be prosecuted as attempted financial exploitation under Iowa law." "I don't want to prosecute them," I said. "I just want them to leave me alone." "Understood. But we're going to make it very clear through legal channels that any further harassment or manipulation attempts will result in formal complaints. Sometimes the threat of legal consequences is enough to stop this behavior." 3 weeks after stopping Michael's mortgage payments, I finalized my new will. The document was comprehensive and ironclad, specifically designed to prevent any family challenges to my decisions. The $3.1 million was distributed as follows: $1.5 million to gambling addiction prevention programs in Harold's name, $800,000 to my casino friends, Martha, Dolores, and Betty for their retirement security, $500,000 to a scholarship fund for widows returning to college, and $300,000 to various local charities that had supported me during my difficult years. My house and remaining assets went to Martha, who had been a true friend through everything. My family, the people who had tried to control my life while exploiting my generosity, received nothing. Margaret included a specific clause explaining that this distribution was made with full mental competency, and after careful consideration of family members' demonstrated attitudes toward the testator's autonomy and financial independence. In plain English, the will made it clear that I was cutting them off because of their behavior, not because of any mental incompetency on my part. The family's reaction to being officially notified of the will changes was swift and predictable. Michael called threatening to contest the will based on undue influence and diminished mental capacity. Jennifer demanded that I reconsider for the sake of family unity. Sarah cried and begged me to think about the grandchildren's future. But the most revealing response came from Tom, who said, "Ellen, this is financial elder abuse in reverse. You're punishing us for caring about you." Financial elder abuse in reverse. He actually thought that me keeping control of my own money was abuse against them. Margaret's response to their legal threats was swift and devastating. She sent each family member a detailed letter outlining their behavior over the past months and explaining exactly how their actions constituted attempted financial exploitation under Iowa state law. Any further attempts to harass, manipulate, or legally challenge Mrs. Richardson's financial decisions will result in formal complaints being filed with the appropriate authorities, the letter concluded. Mrs. Richardson has been thoroughly evaluated and found fully competent to make her own financial decisions. Your previous attempts to establish guardianship through intervention and control have been documented and will be presented as evidence of elder abuse if legal action becomes necessary. The legal threats stopped immediately. 6 months later, I moved into Sunset Manor, a beautiful independent living community on the east side of Cedar Rapids. My apartment overlooks a lake. I have a full social calendar with people who respect my choices. And Martha, Dolores, and Betty visit regularly for coffee and our weekly lottery ticket purchases. Yes, we still play the lottery together. The difference is that now I can afford to lose, and my friends celebrate my small wins without trying to control my spending or take a percentage of my winnings. Michael had to refinance his house to cover the mortgage payments he'd been depending on. Jennifer had to go back to work part-time to maintain their lifestyle. Sarah and Tom canceled their vacation plans when they realized there would be no family financial windfall. None of them have contacted me since Margaret's legal letter. I occasionally hear updates through neighbors' financial struggles, arguments about money, complaints about how unfairly they've been treated. But I also hear that they've learned to live within their actual means instead of depending on subsidies from their financially irresponsible mother. The best part of my new life is the complete absence of guilt, manipulation, and financial pressure. Nobody questions my spending, nobody monitors my bank account, and nobody treats my choices like symptoms of incompetence. My casino friends and I take monthly trips to different casinos around Iowa and Illinois. We play bingo, try our luck at slots, and buy lottery tickets without anyone lecturing us about gambling problems or age-appropriate behavior. Last month, Dolores hit a $500 jackpot, and we celebrated with champagne and steaks. Nobody suggested she needed intervention or financial supervision. The gambling addiction prevention programs I funded in Harold's name have helped hundreds of people with real gambling problems. People who actually lost control of their finances and needed professional help. The irony isn't lost on me that my family's false accusations about my gambling led to genuine help for people with genuine addictions. The scholarship fund has provided college opportunities for 12 widows who wanted to restart their lives after losing their spouses. Each recipient gets a note explaining that the funding comes from a widow who believes in the importance of financial independence and personal autonomy. And yes, I still buy lottery tickets with Harold's numbers every week, not because I need the money anymore, but because it keeps me connected to him and to the consistent choices that proved my judgment was better than anyone gave me credit for. Looking back, I realize my family did me an enormous favor with their intervention. By trying to control my small pleasures while taking my large gifts, they revealed exactly who they were and what they valued. By threatening to abandon me if I didn't surrender my autonomy, they showed me that conditional love isn't love at all. The most satisfying part isn't that I won millions of dollars. It's that I won my freedom from people who saw me as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected. My family wanted to control my money, but instead they taught me to control my boundaries. Harold always said that the best investments pay dividends for life. My lottery ticket paid off once, but investing in my own independence and dignity pays dividends every single day. I'm 71 years old, financially secure, surrounded by genuine friends, and making my own choices without anyone's permission or oversight. My family thought they were staging an intervention to save me from myself. Instead, they saved me from them. And honestly, that's the biggest jackpot I could have ever won. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever had family members who treated your financial choices like they needed their approval? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine.